Hello everyone. So in today's session, we will discuss about PLSQL fundamentals. So PLSQL which stands for Procedural Language Extensions to the Structured Query Language. It is a combination of SQL along with the procedural features of programming languages. It was developed by Oracle Corporation in the early 90s to enhance the capabilities of SQL. PLSQL is one of the three programming languages embedded into the Oracle database along with SQL itself and Java. Now topics to be covered today. Overview of PLSQL and second, introducing database programming units. Now if we talk about PLSQL, so the main purpose of PLSQL is to merge database commands with procedural programming languages. It offers more complete programming solution for building critical applications that operate on the Oracle database. So PLSQL basically supports variables, data types, and control structures such as loops and conditionals, which SQL does not. This makes PLSQL more proficient and efficient for writing program blocks, functions, procedures, triggers, and packages. Now coming to the block structure. So as you can see, we have four major sections: declare, begin, exception, and end. In this, the begin and end section are mandatory. So for every PLSQL block structure, we have to write a begin and an end. The other two are optional, like declare and exception. So declare section, it is an optional part however, the declarative part for the subprogram does not start with declare keyword. It contains the declaration of types, cursors, constants, variables, exceptions, and nested subprograms. These items are local to the subprogram and cease to exist when the subprogram completes execution. Now coming to executable part, this is a mandatory part. As you can see, this is a mandatory part. So we can write any SQL statements here. We can write any PLSQL statements. Now exception handling. This is again an optional part which contains the code that handles runtime errors. Basically, if we want to capture any errors here, we can write in the exception block and end just to end that particular block. Now this is an example where we have declare block. As you can see, v variable, we have begin section, exception section, and end section. So you can see we in declare section we have defined a variable which is of var2 of character 5 characters. Then we have written in block begin section a select statement, and then exception we can write the exceptions. Now going to block types. So basically we have anonymous blocks, procedure, and functions, the three type of block types. So every one has the same structure, you can see, but with a little bit difference. So as you can see, we have in an anonymous block we have declare, begin, exception, and end. In procedure we have procedure, we have written as procedure, then name is, begin, exception, and end, similar to anonymous block. For function we have function, name, return, data type is, begin, return, exception, and end, so similar to this. So now what is the major difference between procedure and function? Let's talk about procedure and function. So functions basically are subprograms that return a single value. So you can see a return type, data type. So this is mainly used to compute and return a value. So suppose we want to calculate any value, then we write a function. For a procedure, these are subprograms that do not return a value directly. These are mainly used to perform a particular action. So if you want to perform any action, we can use a procedure instead of function. These have parameters like in, out, but we will talk it later. So major difference is that it returns a data type. You can see a return is return data type, and procedure we don't have any return data type. Now these are the program constructs as we have already discussed in the previous slides. Declare, we have anonymous block, begin section, exception section, and end section. Now you can see this is the main for announce block. This is the main block where we declare variables. Similarly for stored procedure and function, it is also the same. Now this is the trigger application where we can write any PLSQL or SQL queries. So similarly for procedure and functions. And now for exception, for handling the errors, we have an exception block. So it is called a database trigger, and here it is called as package procedure function. Okay, here. Now moving to next slide. Handling variables in PLSQL. So how do we handle variables? So first we have to declare them and then initialize in the declaration section. So you may notice that we need to define in the declaration section and initialize, where we may initialize at the declare section only. Then in executable section we need to assign new values to them. We can pass these values into the subblocks, subprograms through parameters, and then view results through output variables. Okay, the types of variables. So as you see in the PLSQL, variables must be declared in the declare section or in the package as a global variable. When you declare a variable, PLSQL allocates some memory for the variable values, and the storage location is identified by the variable name. So these are the PLSQL variables types like scalar, composite, reference, and LOBs. We have some non-PLSQL variables which are known as bind and host variables. Okay, so if we talk about scalar, so scalar is a single value with no internal components such as number, we write as a number, with date or boolean. For composite means data items that have internal component and can be accessed individually. For example, collection and records. Now for reference, these are pointers to other data items. LOB are basically large objects, pointers to large objects that are stored separately from other data items such as text, graphic images, video clips, and sound waveforms. So we will talk later about this like description of everything. We have variables examples. For now, you can just know that the different types of variables. For non-PLSQL, we have bind and host variables. Now, declaring PLSQL variables. So this is the syntax: identifier, constant, data type, not null if we want it not, if that variable should not be null, should have any value, then it should not null, and this is default. So if we want some default value, then this is basically the syntax. So here is an example. So you can see v higher date. So it is of date type. So the v higher date will always store a value that is a date, like today's date, v department number. So it is of number type, not null. So it should not be any time null. And its default value is assigned as 10. So a department number will have always a value of 10. V location, so it is of varchar 2. So varchar 2 of 13 characters. So it can store a value of characters of total 13 values. As you can see, we have defined default, which is Atlanta. So V location will be Atlanta. If we try to give more than 13 characters, then this will not take. So therefore we have to define a like less than with the character set. CCOM, this is a constant which is of number, and it can be have like 1400. It can have any number numeric value. Now some guidelines to follow. So there are follow naming conventions. You have to follow some conventions. You have to initialize variables which are designated as not null. Then initialize identifiers using the separators. So we have assignments operator if you want to assign some value, or the default reserved word. So default reserved word is a value that we can store, that it will always remain a default value. Declare at most one identifier per line. So here we have to declare one identifier per line. Okay, so we will coming in the next slides some examples. So as you can see, these are the naming rules. Two variables can have the same name. Two variables can have the same name provided they are in different blocks. So as you can see, we can have two variables, but it should be on different blocks. The variable name identifier should not be the same as the name of the table columns used in the block. So the variable name, so here in the example, see employee number. So we have declared a variable which is employee number, and in the table it has also the same name, employee number. So we are selecting employee number into employee number. So it is quite confusing. So it should not be the same. So we can write something like v underscore employee number. Okay, v underscore employee number, which is of number, and then we can fetch its value into this, whatever the conditions are there. Okay, so adopt a naming convention for PLSQL identifiers. For example, v employee number. Now assigning values to variables. So we have to assign some values. So identifier, and here is the syntax basically. Example, set a predefined hire date for a new employee. So we have defined example like a hire date like 31st December 98. Set the employee name to Maduro. So we have assigned a particular variable to a particular value, that is Maduro. So these are the some basic examples. Now variable initialization and keywords. So as you can see, the assignment operator. So it is an assignment operator which to assign some value. Default keyword, it's to assign some default value, and not null constraint where the value cannot be null at any cost. So these are the variable initialization and keywords, some keywords we have to remember. Okay, now base scalar data types. So as we have talked about scalar data types, so we have var_char2, number, date, char, long, long raw, and boolean. So if we talk about, so first let's talk about char. So char is a fixed length character string with maximum size of 32,767 bytes. So it can store a value up to 32,767 bytes. So, but okay. So let's discuss about var_char2. What is var_char2? So it is a variable length character string with maximum size of 32,767 bytes. Again, we have like var_char and char. So what is the basic difference? So basic difference is that it is of fixed length and it is of variable length. So suppose my name is Arun and I have like length of 4. So if I try to give character as 4, sorry, so if I try to give a character 4, so it will store up to maximum 4 values. But here I can give as like varchar2 varchar2 of 12. Okay, but I'm giving 12, but my name is of Arun, which is of only 4 characters. So what it will do, it will store only 4 characters at my storage. So my storage will not occupy any more space, only 4 spaces. But for a character size, if we give as character as 12, then my internal storage will be stored as 12. Okay, so this is the basic difference. Now number, like for number we have fixed point, floating point number with absolute range. We can give a range like up to precision, to what value and scale. Okay, it can also represent as 0. Then date, date is for giving any particular date. Long, yeah, so long, it is a variable length character string with maximum size of 32,760 bytes. Again, if we have to store some variable length which is of 32, we can take as long, but currently like Oracle does not recommend, or in 12.2.7 afterwards this is not recommended. Again, long raw is of variable size, variable length binary or byte string with maximum size of 32,760. Now main thing is boolean. What is boolean? So you remember that boolean data type stores logical values that are used in logical operations. The logical values are the boolean values like true and false, and it can also be null. Okay, so these are the different types of scalar. Okay, so as you can see, some scalar variable declarations, like examples. vjob, we have a varchar 2 of 9 characters. vcount, it is in binary integer which we have assigned as 0. vtotal salary, which can take a number of 9 numbers up to 2 decimal places, so 2. We order date, of date sys date plus 7, so today's date is suppose was 1st January, so sys date plus 7 would be 8 of January. C tax rate, so it is a constant number where we have 3 characters. It can store up to 3 characters up to 2 precisions, so 8.25. V valid, it is a boolean type, not null, which is of true, which is we have assigned as true. Now if we define a percentage type attribute, so declare a variable according to a database column definition, another previously created variable. So percentage type, where we can define something called like prefix and the database table and column, the previously created column. So suppose I have a employee which is of employee, a table which is an employee table, and we have the name of an employee as a column. Okay, now if we define as, we take some variable as v1 and now give it as name, sorry, employee dot name percentage type. Okay, so this will define that v1 would be a column which is defined as name in table employee. So whatever its value, suppose it has a value of varchar 2 of 10, so it will also have a varchar 2 of value 10, so it will replicate basically this. Okay, so this is the percentage type attribute. Now percentage row type attribute, it is similar to row type. So suppose we have a table as employee and we defined a v1 as employee of table type, percentage row type. Now whatever the columns the employee table have, it will reflect on v1. Suppose it has employee table has name of the employee, age of the employee, and salary of the employee. Now these, now v1 would also have the name of the employee, age of the employee, and salary of the employee. And how do we represent it? Like v1 dot name, we can write as v1 dot name, v1 dot age, and similarly v1 dot salary. So this type, like, so if name is of 10 characters, where char2, age is of number, and salary is of number again, but with 2 points, like up to 2, so 2 decimal places. So this will represent the same structure. Okay, so this will represent the same structure. So we have percentage row type as a similar to, we can define as a variables. Now there are some more examples, like department record is department percentage row type. So we have declared a variable to store the same information about a department as is stored in department table. Okay, and again employee record, which is of employee percentage row type. Now declaring Boolean variables. So only the values true, false, and null can be assigned to a Boolean variable. So this is most important thing, that only true, false, and null can be assigned to a Boolean variable. The variables are connected by the logical operators and or not. So these are connected by logical operators. The variables yield true, false, or null. Arithmetic, character, and date expressions can be used to return a Boolean value. So any arithmetic, character, or date expressions can be used to return a Boolean value. Now coming to composite data types. So basically composite data types are, as you know, these are PLSQL tables. These are objects of type table which are known as PLSQL tables. And PLSQL tables use a primary key to give you array-like access. Array-like access to rows. The number of rows in a PLSQL table can increase dynamically. So as you can see, PLSQL table, these are the table, and we have a PLSQL records. So let's talk about PLSQL tables. So suppose we have to define a PLSQL table. So if we define, like, so this is a syntax, basically a type my first, okay, let it be is table of, now we have to define my first is a table of varchar 2. I'm writing in short, but you start, so it is of 10 characters. Okay, so type my first, this is basically my first is a type, is a table of varchar 2, so it will store a value of 10 characters variable. Okay, now we have defined, so we take as v1 as my underscore first. So this is how we define it. Okay, now we have defined a value type my first, and now my first we have defined as a variable. Now if we want to store v1, suppose first, its first value, and we can write as like hello. Okay, and now v2, sorry, v1, and now second as bye. So we can write as this. Okay, so this is like, this is a PLSQL type of table. PLSQL records, a record is a data structure that can hold items or different kinds. v1 records consist of different fields similar to a row of database objects. So suppose we want to store values which are like different. Suppose we have a type as book, and it has author, subject, like similar to. Okay, so again we have to define uh, a type as, let me just remove it. Now type as books is a table of varchar. Now we have defined as, we are not defining as a table of varchar2. We are defining particular values like something like title of the book, which can be of varchar 2 up to 50. Then we can define author, which is again of varchar 2 of 50. So now this is a PLSQL record which has type as book, and it has some value like title and author. So these two will be storing values. So these are composite types, means we can store more than one value. Composite types, whereas in scalar we can store only one value. So scalar only stores one value, only one value, and composite can store multiple values. Okay. Now bind variables. So we have talked about like all the scalar data types. Now we will talk about the non-PLSQL data types. So these are bind variables. So bind variables are nothing but it accepts values from the user. Basically, if we want to accept, if we want to give something like give me all the records where department is mechanical. Okay, so it will input the value from the user and then try to give fetch records based on that particular input from the user. So it, like as you can see, it fetches all the things from the server, and then based on that it uh, generates some values. Okay, so this is bind variables. So as you can see, so non-PLSQL prefix the reference with a colon, so it is a colon structure basically. Bind is actually accepting some value to return the result. So it is actually accepting some value to return the result using bind variables. To reference a bind variable in a PLSQL, you must prefix its name with a colon. So what we can do, if we try to print, so this is an example. We have declared a section of v salary, which is an employee type. We have fetched its value where employee number is 7369, and then this 7369 is assigned to this G salary. Okay, so this bind variable has been assigned as a value. Okay, so let's move forward. So DBMS output. So this is the main output where we can see, where we want to see the output of any particular PLSQL block. Okay, so we have to write dbms underscore output dot put line. So it is basically a built-in package that enables you to display output, debugging information, and send messages from PLSQL blocks, subprograms, packages, triggers. We have already used this package, okay, in coming slides. So we will we will follow that particular. So it must be enabled with SQL plus set server output. If we write set server output on, the dbms output dot put line will be enabled. So you can see this is a PLSQL block where we have written begin. We have written a dbms output, so tables in the database. So what will it do? It will select all the table name from user tables and will display in the loop. So if there are suppose 10 tables, so it will display all the 10 names of that particular table. Okay. Now PLSQL block syntax and guidelines. Statements can continue over several lines. Lexical units can be separated by spaces, delimiters, identifiers, and comments. So just these are the guidelines. Identifiers, these this is the main thing that it can can contain, like suppose we are giving some variable, so it can contain up to 30 characters. So more than 30 characters is not allowed. Cannot contain reserved words unless enclosed in double quotation marks. So it cannot contain any reserved words. Suppose default is a keyword, right? So we cannot write as default. We cannot take a variable name as default. Must begin with an alphabetic character. So we cannot write like one and then variable. Okay, so we have to write variable one. This is the main. Should not have the same name as database table column name. So already talked about that. It cannot have a name like as an employee name. We cannot take a variable as employee name, which is already in a table. So these are the main guidelines, some guidelines. Okay, so we have some data type conversions which converts data type to comparable data types. Okay, comparable data types. So you can see conversion functions are toChar, toDate, and toNumber. So suppose it is in here. Here is an example where we have vdate, varchar2 up to 15 characters. We have it is of character type, right? And we are fetching or extracting the date into vdate. So you can see we are converting the date into the character. Okay, so we are converting the date, higher date, into character and then storing it in vdate. Okay, so we have some conversion functions to date, to char, and to number. These are nested blocks and variable scope. So these are nested blocks. So you can see we have like multiple blocks: begin, then we have declare section, then begin and end, then end. So if an exception, if we are writing something here, then first this block will work, then this block will work. Okay, so these are nested variables. So it can have value x and y, and we can use x value here, but we cannot use y value in the outer block. Scope of x, this is the scope of x, and scope of y. So you can see the scope of y. Operators in PLSQL, these are same as in SQL. We have logical, arithmetic, concatenation, parenthesis to control order of operation, exceptional operator. So using bind variables, as you mentioned, like as I mentioned before, we can reference a bind variable. So it is similar to that. We can represent it with a colon. So here is an example of bind variable G salary. We have assigned it to bind variable. Now intending code. So this is for clarity, just for clarity, like it can be understand better. We have to write in intend each level of the code. Like example, you can see begin and end. It is very clear that begin here and we have an end. If x is equals to 0, then y is equals to 1, and then we are doing end if. So you very neat and clean. Here also declare, begin and end are in one line, like one particular column. Then we have all the declarations and all the stuffs in the SQL inside. So these are the like intending code. So for now, this is complete. We will have my next session to discuss various other forms of PLSQL and fundamentals. Thank you for now.